Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast. With your hosts, Ashley and Michael, please sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast presented by the Undroppables and sponsored by Analyst Depot. I'm your host, Ashley. This is my lovely co-host, Michael Duncan. How are you tonight?
I am not bad, Ashley. I'm doing A-okay, exceptionally average on this Wednesday, Valentine's Day. I didn't realize how depressing that sounded until I remembered it was Valentine's Day and then said that it was Valentine's Day and I'm doing a podcast. So,
With me. Happy Valentine's Day.
yeah, but you're going to leave the podcast and hang out with your significant other. My Valentine is my dog, and I love my dog, and that's what I'm going. That's what I'm going to be cuddling with tonight. So,
Downy, I feel like it's time for you to release a picture, more pictures on Twitter. It's been a little while. You need to give the fans some Downy content tonight.
Maybe I will. We'll see.
Everyone,
She's
bear
been
with
on the
me.
podcast, I'm pretty sure. So
I know she has. That's what I'm saying. Everyone, bear with me throughout the show. I have lost my voice. I got back from vacation where my sister competed in high school cheerleading nationals and lost my voice rooting for them, and they placed 9th in the nation out of 90 teams. So I'm really proud of that. Shout out to my sister. But we'll get started. We have a lot to talk about today, some news and obviously the Super Bowl recap. But before we do, just want to talk about what happened today. The Chiefs obviously won the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and celebrated today with their parade in Kansas City. And towards the end of the parade, at the station there were gunshots, and an active shooter situation was happening at the end of their parade. One person has died. It is believed that 10 to 15 people are injured. There are, what were the numbers we had? There are several kids who were injured in the attacks and are being treated at Children's Mercy in Kansas City.
Yeah, as of right now, it's 12 patients, 11 of them are children, and 9 have gunshot wounds. As of 6:19 p.m. Eastern Time via my sports update, Ari Mirov.
Absolutely ridiculous that this keeps happening, that there is no safe place you can be in this country without having to fear for your life. And it's beyond time that things change. And our hearts go out. I wish there was more I could say and more we could do, but it's time to start really addressing this. And this is so sick that there's not a single place you can't be. Everyone remembers being a kid, being lucky enough to go to a Super Bowl parade, and now kids are dying all the time from active shooters, and it's time things changed.
It's embarrassing how numb I felt today. And I don't mean that in a way that, oh, this thing happening made me feel numb. I'm numb to the idea of it happening. It barely had an impact on my day. And
it's another one.
Yeah. And it's just, I remember when I was younger, I had asked my parents about the Virginia Tech thing. And the way they talked about it, and the way that it felt, not, it wasn't 9/11, but it was the type of thing where, again, this is the way my parents described it, that you knew where you were. You knew what happened. Everyone was watching the news. And now it happens so often, whether it's a school, whether it's a Super Bowl parade, whether it's a concert. Everyone just goes on living. And it's unfortunate.
In 47 days this year, there have been 45 mass shooting events in 2024.
Yeah.
It's time for this country to make some serious changes.
Yeah.
And our hearts go out to everyone who was affected, everyone who was there, everyone who was injured, lost someone, knows someone. And there was swift response by everyone, even the fans who were there, who helped capture the person who was responsible. So it shouldn't be the responsibility of those people to have to do that, but an incredible job by all. But we will get started in talking about what we are usually here to talk about to start with, which is the news. Steelers released quarterback Mitch Trubisky. With that, there was a significant odds change, and that the new favorite to go to the Steelers is Justin Fields. Obviously, the Bears have a lot of decisions to make regarding their picks in this year's draft, and if they choose to stick with Justin Fields or move on in a new direction with some of the top quarterback talent in the draft this year.
AKA Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Yep. So that'll be interesting. I mean,
It's going to be a fun ride. It's not going to be quite the quarterback carousel that I think we've kind of become accustomed to in recent years. It feels like that whole chapter of the NFL offseason and free agency began with the Peyton Manning tour back in whenever that was. Then there was the Tom Brady tour. Obviously, Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers have been massive conversations the last couple of off seasons. And this season, there's not going to be quite that level. But Justin Fields is going to be the topic of any and every conversation until the day that the draft happens, and possibly afterward, depending if he's traded beforehand or if he's not traded beforehand and they take Caleb Williams, but you've got other names like, Ryan Tannehill, possibly Russell Wilson, who it sounds like is on the move again after being benched. So, it's going to be a fun off season, obviously.
It should be.
Unless you're a Bills fan, maybe.
Yeah. Some coaching stuff, both regarding the Super Bowl. We'll start with Steve Spagnuolo, obviously, who is now the only coordinator with 4 Super Bowl wins. He was signed to an extension following the Chiefs win. Well-deserved with what he's done with this team and how well he's performed throughout the season. The Chiefs' defense is one of the key reasons they even made it this far into a playoff run, let alone winning the Super Bowl. So Spags will be with the Chiefs for the foreseeable future. And obviously it's sparking some conversations about should Spags have another opportunity at a head coaching gig. We'll see how that plays out in the next year, 2 years, whatever. But for now, Spags will remain with the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I don't want to just gloss over that. You kind of threw that in there. He is the only offensive or defensive coordinator in NFL history to win 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
all the people
really...
that are how long they're tenured and he's the only one. It's crazy.
What was his 4th? Was it the Giants?
Yes. He was involved in the Giants over the Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Was he also your head coach? He was, right?
No.
What? What am I thinking of?
He was head coach of the Rams.
Oh God. Yeah, he's a very
till 2011, I think he was with the Rams.
Okay, and he did start with the Eagles. That's yeah, he was defensive. Oh yeah, he rode that Super Bowl win into the head coach for the Rams. Yeah, okay, 2009 to 2011. All right, I knew I mixed that up a little bit, but yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and obviously I'm not the first person to say this. I'm definitely not the last. But something that I've said quite a few times in the past couple of episodes, and I'm going to say it again, is I think the biggest advantage that an organization or a team can have, especially when you've got a guy like Andy Reid as your head coach, or Sean McVay or whoever it is having an older, experienced defensive coordinator that is not going to be leaving to become a head coach. And that's why, it's just incredible to see what a coordinator, like, there were people calling for Spags' firing with the Chiefs. I mean, he started there in 2019. It didn't take long for them to want him gone. But he's turned it around and he has been absolutely fantastic. And I think it's safe to say that without him, they probably don't have the season they have this year, because he kept them alive in a lot of games. That defense was outstanding. And it's also really, really young in a lot of key positions, especially cornerback. Trent McDuffie was awesome and
amazing.
I'm sorry, young defenses as a whole are very rare to find be good at all, let alone the level of which they were this season, and especially in the Super Bowl for the most part. So, good for Spags.
Well deserved by Spags. In much heavier news, on the Niners side of the ball, Steve Wilkes is now out as Niners defensive coordinator after his 1 season with them. This was announced very shortly after Kyle Shanahan in a press conference, as he expected all of his coaches to return. But Steve Wilkes will not be returning.
Look, I mean, we're going to get to the game, but you held Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. I know I just said that they haven't been as good this season, but you still
Mhm.
held them to 19 points in regulation. And meanwhile, the offense that consists of George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and apparently a top front runner for MVP and Brock Purdy scored how many points in regulation? Oh yeah, 19. So obviously Kyle Shanahan can't fire himself.
Mhm.
And you're not going to fire him because what he brings to the table is extremely, extremely valuable. But this was not a move that I really saw coming, and it's definitely
No,
not the takeaway that I had after this game. So, I mean, whatever floats your
not at
boat,
all.
Kyle, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, like, and it doesn't feel like one you, like, really need a scapegoat for, right? Like, it didn't feel like there had to be a sacrificial lamb here to me.
No, I
Um,
agree.
and it feels like that's what they did to him meaninglessly. Like, I didn't come out of this for the Niners saying, like, "Oh, like, somebody has to be fired." And it kind of feels like that's how they responded internally, which is interesting.
I'm not sure there's ever been a bigger scapegoat or guy who's
Mhm.
gotten shafted as much as Steve it feels like Steve
Yeah.
Wilkes has. He was the head coach in the for the Cardinals in 2018 for one whole season, and if I'm
Mhm.
remembering correctly, that is the year they drafted Josh Rosen and then had the number 1 overall pick, fired him, hired Cliff Kingsbury, drafted Kyler Murray,
Kyler Murray.
went on to be the Cleveland Browns defensive coordinator for one whole season. He was
Yep.
in the college ranks for a year, and then he was the interim head coach for the Panthers
Yes.
after about a half season of being their defensive pass game coordinator, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, just I don't know, man. I don't know what you're looking for. Like,
Yeah.
it's his first season back with a very undermanned, not
Mhm.
exceptionally talented, at least on the back end defense for the San Francisco 49ers. Like, yeah, you have Nick Bosa, who, by the way, probably underperformed given the
Yeah.
contract you gave him this season, but you didn't hear that from me.
Mhm.
Um, and you've got some great linebackers, a solid safety who was injured. Like,
Mhm.
I just don't know what you expect from him. What does he have to do to keep his job? Win the Super Bowl? Because if
Like,
that's the difference, like,
then what are you doing here? Like,
it shouldn't. I just don't get it. I Matt Patricia let up 41 points to Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles, then got a head coaching gig.
yeah.
What?
Yep.
But we're firing. Okay, it's stupid. It's stupid.
It is stupid.
It's bad management, but it is what it is. If there's one thing
It
Kyle
is.
Shanahan is not good at, it's management. So throwing that out
Yes.
there.
Another big move though for the Niners. The Commanders are now hiring 49ers assistant head coach Anthony Lynn as their run game coordinator. The Commanders had made a run at him last year, but they didn't end up, poaching him. They got him this year, and Lynn has a relationship with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, so it makes sense for him to make the move. But that is another spot that the Niners now have to fill following the defeat in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. It's not a crazy role, but Anthony Lynn has been he's had good years in the NFL.
Mhm,
He was a head coach, obviously, with the Chargers, offensive coordinator for the Lions.
mhm,
Another guy who I think maybe has gotten the wrong end of the shaft a couple of times, but
mhm.
obviously, he hasn't been particularly exceptional either. But
Yeah.
for some reason, the first thing I'll always think of him as is the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, and he was only the interim. But for
The
whatever
interim.
reason, I'm like, Anthony Lynn, the Bills.
Yeah, the Bills. Yeah,
What? No, the Chargers. Although
I know what you mean.
he did parlay that into a head coaching gig, and that brings back the
Yes.
conversation that we had a couple weeks ago, where we were talking about interim head coaches becoming head
Yes.
coaches. So I don't know. That
Yes.
just there
Full
we go.
circle.
Yep, full
There
circle.
you go. We finally finished the conversation.
No, we haven't because I'll bring this up now every time I think about it, and it occurs to me, and someone
Perfect.
matches that description. So
Okay,
it's gonna be great.
perfect. Well, the season's officially over. The Super Bowl wrapped up. The Chiefs walk away in overtime with a 25-22 defeat of the San Francisco 49ers. We have our first back-to-back Super Bowl champions in 19 years since the Patriots. And the Chiefs are already talking about going for a three-peat. It was a weird one. It was very boring until it wasn't.
It was a
Tell
horrible
us a
game.
little Yeah. Tell
It
us about
was
it.
So it was the type of game where I was texting. I put it in our Undroppables chat, but I was also just
Mhm,
talking to my friends and texting a couple of my friends and went there. And I think it was in the third quarter, maybe even toward the end, where I was like,
mhm.
"Who is the MVP of this game?"
Yeah.
Like the Niners were winning, but who's the MVP? And then the Chiefs tied it, or no, they didn't tie it until the fourth quarter.
It was like, "Oh my
Um,
god, Jawan Jennings is gonna be the MVP of this
Yeah,
game."
and it's because he had one passing touchdown.
Yeah.
Eventually he caught a receiving touchdown, and that was like, okay,
Yes.
yeah, like it's
Yeah.
probably him. But before that, there was a really good argument to be made that it was probably going to be the kicker for the Chiefs.
Mhm.
And that I think says everything that needs to be said about how exciting this game was, which is
Mhm.
to say that it wasn't. The first
No.
3 quarters of this game were arguably on par with Patriots Rams from
Rams.
2019,
Yeah.
which was terrible. And it through 3 quarters, the score was 13-3, Kansas City. So that was the point in time where I was like, is the MVP? Is it the kicker? Yeah, it was going into the fourth
Mhm.
quarter. It just ridiculously bad. It was sloppy football. It wasn't even. There were some moments, obviously defensively, there were definitely some forced mistakes, but there were also just
Mhm.
like what is going on?
Stupid.
The biggest play for the 49ers in the first half was that bobbled thing that I forget who it hit off of, and the ball was
Yeah.
bobbled in the air,
Mhm.
and it ended up in the arms of whomever it was.
Mhm.
Clearly, a lot of retention on this game.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I'll be honest, I actually felt like the 49ers were going to win it because it reminded me a
Mhm.
lot of those moments in the past where it's just like, oh, God is clearly with you today.
Yeah.
Um, but no, because then the ball bounced off the one guy, the heel of the one San Francisco player on the punt, and that
Mhm.
ended up being one of the biggest Chiefs plays of the game. It
Yes.
wasn't good football. It wasn't entertaining football. It was about as disappointing of a first 3 quarters as you could possibly expect when you're looking at arguably the most dominant team in the NFL for the majority of the season, the 49ers,
Yep.
and the team that won the Super Bowl last year and has been to how many AFC championships in a row. It was not
Mhm.
exciting. It was not fun. It was not good. But
No. But
then
then
we
it
got,
was.
then it was. Um, which, by the way, can you explain? I should have looked this up. I keep meaning to, and I keep forgetting. Do you
Mhm.
know the time rule for
There
overtime?
is no time rule for overtime. The clock is pointless.
That's stupid.
Yes.
That's
There shouldn't be a clock. Like in overtime, like so this was the debate. And if you listen to the final drive,
Actually, wait. Let's
by the
not get there. Let's not get
broadcasters.
there yet. We're gonna go to
Okay.
overtime. We're gonna get to
Okay.
overtime. I'm jumping ahead. That's my
Okay.
brain. We will get there when we get there. Um, yeah. So tell me about that fourth quarter. It started to get exciting, and things actually started working somewhat,
It
sort of.
did. It seems like the Chiefs offense started to show up a little bit. They started to be able to create a good mix of running and passing the balls, and it felt like the Chiefs started to get smarter with how they were playing. They were chipping away, um, and the Niners defense started to fall apart. And obviously, at some point, the Niners lose Dre Greenlaw to an Achilles injury running on the field. He was jumping up and down, getting like warming himself up to get back out there while there was a change of possession. And on his way out, he tears his Achilles, and that makes a huge difference. I have the numbers here for his replacement. If you give me 2 seconds. So his replacement obviously did not perform as well as him, and that made a huge impact on what happened. Where are the numbers? I sent them to you.
They are Oren Burks filled in for him.
Oh, there we go.
And here's how
Mhm,
he did in coverage. 9 targets, 9 catches allowed, 1
mhm,
touchdown, 134.7 passer rating when targeted, and
mhm,
a 32.1 PFF coverage grade, which is bad. That is very
mhm.
bad. Those are bad numbers if you are said linebacker for the 49ers.
Yes, and you can see actually the inside the NFL released film today of when Dre Greenlaw went down and the reactions from his teammates and from the Chiefs sideline. And Mahomes points out that he was down to his offensive coordinator and was like, "Hey, like he's out."
Yeah.
So it was a cue to say, "Hey, this is how we have to adapt our game plan. And it makes sense. It's smart football. You target a weaker link, and that guy's not a starter, and Dre Greenlaw is Dre Greenlaw. Like you're going to attack where you can. And the Chiefs did that. And the Chiefs finally show up. So for the first time in this game, it starts to feel like, okay, if you're like me, I never doubted Patrick Mahomes. I always had a feeling that this game wouldn't end the way it was the first 3 quarters. But these are the moments in this fourth quarter where you finally say, okay, Patrick Mahomes is here. And I actually start to believe what I'm spewing, right? Like the whole game, I'm like, it's Patrick Mahomes. It's Patrick Mahomes. At the end of the third quarter, I'm like, what have I been saying all night? Like maybe it's not. Like maybe I was wrong. And then he finally shows up and he is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it really comes down to is you let him hang around. Like,
yeah.
I feel like I've said it 1,000 times. Kyle Shanahan is just not, he's not a good game manager. He's not a good head coach in that he is not good at the differences in roles between head coach and offensive coordinator. He is a great, he's a very good play caller. He's one of the brightest offensive minds in the NFL in terms of scheming and all of that. In game, though, his decision making is bad, and it actively gives them a negative when it comes to ability to win the game. Thankfully, he was very much bailed out by the fact that Andy Reid had some classic, like I'm telling you, like growing up listening to WIP, hearing people curse on the radio, talking about Andy Reid wasting a timeout a minute into the third quarter. Like that level of like, come on, Andy, what are you doing, man? We might need that timeout. Like Kyle Shanahan was kept alive by that. If Kyle Shanahan was playing a head coach, it just gives a slight advantage. Like I'm not talking Doug Peterson in 2017, where basically, in my opinion, one of the best game managers from a head coach position that we've seen, or even Nick Sirianni last year, because he wasn't calling plays and he has the ability to take time to do that. If it was even a John Harbaugh level of like good decision making, because he's not focused on calling plays, like that would have been horrible for Kyle Shanahan. The game probably would have been over sooner. It probably wouldn't have gone to overtime. But Kyle Shanahan kept themselves competitive by arguing over who can make worse choices throughout the whole game. The Chiefs, for instance, they should have been more aggressive. They settled too often, too much, and too often, and you can't do that when you're playing Patrick Mahomes, and that is why. That is why. Because look what's going to happen. If you go into the fourth quarter and you say, Patrick Mahomes, you need a touchdown and we can win this game. Guess what he's probably going to get in the fourth quarter? I don't care how many points or how many yards or what he's looked like up till that point. The Eagles fucked around and found out last year. The San Francisco 49ers fucked around and found out this year. Like, it is what it is. He is trailed in every Super Bowl that he's been in. Every Super Bowl win that he's ever had, he is trailed by, it was 7 or 10 points. It was one of those. He's 3 Super Bowl wins. He is trailed by over 7 points in each of those. It's either 7 or 10. I forget the stat. I need to start
I'm trying to find
putting
the
these
exact
somewhere
number
where I can find it. But he's ridiculous. He's ridiculous. He led the team in rushing, by the way. So, yeah.
Well, let's get to overtime.
Yeah.
And then we could talk about some numbers and stuff.
Fair enough.
So, we go to overtime.
Yep. First,
CBS teased it.
Rules?
Yes.
Yep.
And CBS teased it to us when they foresaw that this game was going to go to overtime. The CBS executive, when asked about how the previous, most recent CBS Super Bowls have been boring, had said this game was going to go into double overtime and be an overtime Super Bowl. And his vision, he prophesized this. And then a weird call happens that has a lot of people scratching their heads. And it's Niners make the call on the coin flip and elect to have the ball first. Now, the new overtime rules is both teams get the opportunity to possess the ball. This stems from the 2021 AFC Championship game between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, where Josh Allen never had the opportunity to possess the ball in overtime. That was the game. That was the catalyst for the rule change for overtime, to allow both teams to have the opportunity to score. Most view this as an incredible thing. I agree. I think it's a great, great thing. Now, the rules are if the first team to have possession goes down and scores a touchdown and an extra point, you have to go down and score a touchdown and an extra point to tie it and try again, or a 2-point conversion and win. If the other team scores a field goal, you just need a field goal to tie or a touchdown to win. If the first team doesn't score and you score, you win. There is a clock on the screen for some reason. The clock is meaningless. And in the drive, the final drive in overtime, the clock is ticking down and people are getting confused. And you can hear the broadcasters trying to like explain it, but also narrate the game at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like very fast paced. I listened to the final drive back again, and it's like you had to really keep up with what they were saying. It's the first time that I was like, oh, like they seem overwhelmed up there, because they're trying to explain the new overtime rules. The fact that there's a clock, but it doesn't really make a difference, because somebody has to win here. The clock is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. If anything, I don't know the exact rules if they would have to just change sides of the field.
Yeah, I assume that's probably what it is.
But it also doesn't really make a difference in a Super Bowl because there is no like home side.
No, but I disagree because wind and there is strategy to picking. Yeah, it comes into play like 1% of the time, but there is technically strategy.
So that would be my only thing is I don't know if they just switch which side of the field they're on when the clock ends in the first quarter of overtime. But what happens here is usually you elect to take the ball second because then you know what you have to do.
So, okay, so I want to stop you there because I think the wording you're choosing is very important. I would not say that usually you would do this because first of all, this is the first time it's ever happened.
Yes, that's true.
And second of all, maybe this is a hot take. Mm-hmm. I don't think that Kyle Shanahan and the Niners made the wrong choice.
Okay.
I don't think there's a right choice or a wrong choice.
I don't think so either.
And I don't think, like, obviously, if the old overtime rules, you take the ball first, obviously, because if you score, it's game over. Mm-hmm. If you want to apply that logic, then you could make an argument to say that Kyle Shanahan made the right choice, which is if you score a touchdown, they'll score a touchdown. And if they score a touchdown, now it's sudden death, which, yes, once both teams get to possess the ball, then it becomes sudden death, and it's the overtime rules of old. Next person to score any amount of points wins. Now, there's a whole different conversation if you should possibly get the ball, kneel down on the 1-yard line, get a turnover of downs, and then force a safety with your defense. Yes. That's a different conversation that maybe we'll get into in the offseason. Maybe we can talk about that a little deeper because I saw a tweet about that. I think that's got some potential. Okay. Anyway, if you're not understanding what I'm saying, don't worry about it. It's really not important. But there is value to having the first possession of the sudden death. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think the important factor here is not the choice that the Niners made versus the one that the Chiefs would have made, because they've come out and they've said that they would have taken the ball second. The important factor here is that one of them was prepared, and they've been prepared, because you heard multiple Chiefs players say after the game that, hey, we would have taken the ball second, and if they scored a touchdown and we scored if the Niners scored a touchdown and we scored a touchdown, we would have gone for 2 to end the game. That is what they said they were going to do. They had a plan and they were simply ready for it.
Can I read it?
Yes, go for it.
From The Ringer. It's what you're saying. I'm going to read the exact quotes from The Ringer. Yep. So Lindsey Jones wrote an article on The Ringer that says the Chiefs' overtime plan worked out exactly as they had hoped, and it wasn't by accident. Kansas City's safety Justin Reed told The Ringer that the Chiefs had first discussed the new overtime rules as far back as training camp. Defensive lineman Chris Jones told me players were prepared for what to expect if the Super Bowl went to overtime. Quote, "We talked through this for 2 weeks," Jones said, "how we were going to give the ball to the opponent. If they scored, we was going to go for 2 at the end of the game. We rehearsed it." End quote. The 49ers did not do the same. Multiple San Francisco players said after the game that they were not aware of the overtime rules are different in the playoffs than they are in the regular season, and strategy discussions over how to handle the overtime period did not occur as a team. Defensive lineman Eric Armstead said that he learned the details of the postseason rule when it was shown on the Allegiant Stadium Jumbotron during a TV timeout after regulation.
Objectively hilarious.
Fullback Kyle Juszczyk said he assumed the 49ers asked to receive when they won the toss because that's how you do it in the regular season when a touchdown wins the game. Quote, I guess that's not the case. I don't really know the strategy, Juszczyk said.
Yeah.
There's
the
clip.
issue,
There's a clip.
Yeah. The issue is not the choice that was made. It's the logic that went behind the choice and the preparation that came behind the choice. Because honestly, if I'm the 49ers and I have planned, if I have planned and I said I will absolutely take the ball first because I believe that gives us the best advantage, I'm probably not kicking a field goal.
No.
I'm going for it, and I'm going for a touchdown. Again, maybe that's not the right call. I don't know. We've never seen it before. This isn't like the old overtime where it's very obvious and easy to say what the correct choice is. But listen to what the Chiefs were planning. They said if we both scored a touchdown, we would go for 2. That could also lose them the game. Being aggressive is what wins these types of games. There was not a plan, and that falls on one single person. We have someone in the comments, CMC MVP. I have a feeling he's probably a 49ers fan. He said the Niners weren't prepared, and that falls on one person. It doesn't fall on the players. It doesn't fall on the offensive coordinator, the GM, the defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes, who just lost his job over this game. It falls on Kyle Shanahan.
Yep. Can you play the video I DM'd you? I'll re-DM it to you so it's the most recent one. Of the Inside the NFL captured basically the coin toss and what had happened there. And there's some interesting moments in there from both sides of the ball. So I want to play that clip if it's possible.
Yep. Give me one sec.
Sure.
Can you say again where we are getting this from?
Yes, this is from Inside the NFL. This is from a tweet from Evan Abrams, but the content is from Inside the NFL.
Awesome. Here it is. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
That's why you want to kick it. They call it. They call it, right? Yeah, they call it coin flip. It's their coin flip, right? Which way do you want to kick it?
We want the ball, Fred. San Francisco, you are still the visitors. What is your call?
Tails again.
He called tails again.
Nice slow-mo for those listening and not watching.
Tails. You want the ball. Which way do you want to kick?
We're going to kick that way.
San Francisco will receive first and overtime. Good luck, gentlemen.
They want it. They want the ball. They wanted it. Hey, they wanted it. They wanted it, baby. We want them to have the ball. They want it. They can have it.
Hey, even if we score a touchdown, they still get the ball. I didn't know that.
We won the toss. We're going to kick off, too. We got what we wanted.
Jay, you said something about Patrick Mahomes.
You can pause it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
telling.
Yeah, you can tell the difference in awareness and excitement based on what just occurred on one sideline versus the others.
Yep. And it's like Shanahan directs it, whereas like we don't see the clip. Obviously Mahomes and Reed would have discussed to double check that they, would have wanted to defer, but it doesn't really seem like there's much of a discussion about it. And then you have 49ers still asking about the rules. Like, wait a second, they get a chance to get the ball? Like what? Like they didn't know. And that is a lack of teamwork, of communication, of game planning, of game management, that I feel like we haven't had much insight to in a long time. To have all of this discussion and all of this information coming out about it is really interesting to see. And it gives me a sense of pretty serious disorganization. And I'm not saying the Niners are a disorganized franchise, but just that they came in a little bit disorganized and a lot underprepared.
And again, I want to be clear. I don't think they necessarily made the wrong choice. I
don't think we have enough data to say what the right choice
No.
is. Like I know what I would do, but I can't
Exactly.
tell you that that's 100% right.
Yeah, this isn't this is not the same conversation as the going for it on fourth down for Dan Campbell. Like we don't have numbers that we can point to and say, well, this adds this win percentage. This is the first time it's ever happened in NFL history. And there's an argument to be made for both things. It's a choice that has an overall outcome on many plays rather than a single call on one single play. It's drastically different. And what it really comes down to is, I think you said it well. Maybe they're not a disorganized franchise. Maybe Kyle Shanahan even was drastically aware of what he was doing. There is a very real chance that Kyle Shanahan knew exactly in his mind. He had his own reasoning, and he decided what he was going to do.
Mhm.
But the difference in what makes the Chiefs as great as they've been and what makes Andy Reid one of the best head coaches of all time, not just a good offensive mind and a good offensive play caller, but also just a great head coach, save for misusing timeouts, is he has everyone on the same page. They went back to the preseason and they practiced this because they know they're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the approach you have to have if you want to have this type of franchise, this type of historic success, which, yes, that is where we're at now with the Kansas City Chiefs. Meanwhile, Kyle Shanahan is a brilliant offensive mind, a brilliant play caller for the most part. And what does that get him? A bunch of blown leads in some of the biggest games of his career and a lack to do anything to change it. Because guess what? Brock Purdy wasn't that good in this game.
Agreed.
So, yeah. I wish there was more to say, but I'm not going to sit here and knock the choice. A lot of people were like, obviously you take the ball, or obviously you kick the ball. I don't necessarily believe that. I've said it a couple times now. It's all about the reasoning. It's more of what that decision-making process told us about each of these teams.
Yes.
That is my takeaway.
I think that can be completely dependent on the game too. You could have a very clear picture in your head that you want to get the ball second, but your defense is gassed right now, right? Like they just spent a whole fourth quarter fighting for their lives. Maybe you say my offense is prepared right now and I'd rather put my defense out there second. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that changes. But that's something you have to have conversations about. And I think you need to have conversations with players, coordinators, coaches. And we don't know what happened for weeks leading up to the Niners, but very clearly the players are saying they were not aware or involved in these discussions, which creates a barrier for success. When there is not open communication. We've seen how hard it is for something like the Belichick way, where there's just one person and not a lot of communication and decisions from one area. And I never really felt like Kyle Shanahan was that way. But to me, this is kind of the way it felt, right? Like, I'm here, I'm making the decision. You don't really need to be informed about that. And again, he could have had all of the knowledge in the world and the right mindset to do it. But sending your team out there, your offense out there, without the full set of information, maybe they would have played a little bit differently. And I know they're playing in overtime in the Super Bowl for a Super Bowl ring. They're playing hard no matter what. But maybe it would have been just the slightest little difference. And that changes it. And that to me is the bigger story here.
It's the slightest little differences that make the difference between
yes,
winning 2 straight Super Bowls and, losing in overtime or losing in the fourth quarter. So,
yeah. I do want to say, I saw the tweet that I had sent you about the luck percentage for the Niners. So of 80 and for the Chiefs, sorry, of 80 NFL playoff teams since 2018, the Chiefs just completed the luckiest run. There was a plus 57% win probability added on fumble recoveries alone. That data is coming from Tom Bliss, whose Twitter handle is Data with Bliss. He had said, using our framework 2023, Kansas City had the most win probably added via luck of any playoff team since 2018. The most significant plays for Kansas City were Buffalo's missed field goal with 1:47 left. That created a plus 18.7%. Buffalo dropped 54-yard pass with 8 minutes and 23 seconds left. And the recovery of the San Francisco muffed punt with 2:42 left in quarter 3 at plus 15.6. So a little bit of luck in this story for the Chiefs too.
And I want to be clear, partly to protect your mentions on Twitter, do not hear what she's not saying.
No.
Luck is part of the game, and it's not necessarily about luck that won them a Super Bowl. It is, what did they do with that luck? When you have good
how
fortune,
did they create that luck? Like,
yes,
you have to put yourself in a position to benefit from the luckiness. And they had themselves in a position to benefit from the luckiness.
Yeah.
There were just things that went their way. And
for context, because I think this is important, Let's look at a couple of the others in the top 10. The 2020
Mhm.
Buffalo Bills were number 2. They did not win a Super Bowl. The 2019 Tennessee Titans were number 3. They did not win a Super Bowl. By the way, the Buffalo Bills were just barely behind the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of percentage added via luck. The 2018 Kansas City Chiefs, did they win? No, that was not the one they won. No, that was not the one they won. That was the
No.
one they lost to Tom Brady. Yeah,
Yes.
because that was the most boring Super Bowl of all time. 2020 Green Bay Packers, they did not win a Super Bowl. 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they did win. 2022 Kansas City, they did win. And I have a feeling that I know, the fumble recoveries was the big part of that. I wonder which one that was. 2020 Chicago Bears, what? They didn't win.
Interesting.
2018
Yeah.
Los Angeles Rams, they did not win. They
Mhm.
lost the most boring Super Bowl of all time. And the 2020 Cleveland Browns, they did not win a Super Bowl.
Mhm.
So of that list, I believe
2
three
were the
of the
Chiefs, 1 were
two
the
of the
Bucks.
Chiefs, one were the Bucks. 3 of the top 10 actually won a Super Bowl. It's
Mhm.
not about luck. It's about
No.
getting the luck and taking advantage of it, which again,
Mhm.
I think the biggest under-discussed part of this entire Super Bowl is the Niners did not have any points, I want to say. It was either none or 3 points off of turnovers.
Yes.
And that, again, you're just going to let them hang around. Part of that came down to, in my opinion, not being aggressive. There were multiple times when I thought they should have gone for a touchdown when they were in the red zone, and rather they settled for a field goal. Look what happens. It's, yeah.
Speaking of field goals, Harrison Butker's kick, the 57-yard field goal,
Oh, yeah.
is now a new Super Bowl record.
Yep.
Do you know who the record holder prior was?
Yeah, it was the other kicker for.
It was the other kicker. It was Jake Moody. It was the other kicker for the. It was the kicker for the Niners. Jake Moody previously held the record at 55. Harrison Butker broke his record in front of him and then went on to win the Super Bowl. Another fun fact: there's only Juwan Jennings obviously threw and caught a touchdown pass. I'll let you answer my question of who the other player is to do that. The only other player to do that
in Super Bowl history is Nick
in Super Bowl
Foles,
history.
and only one of those 2 players won the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
I'll let you determine what's more important.
And Kurt Warner is still the only quarterback to win the Super Bowl wearing number 13.
Yes. And by the way, just because I'm highly intrigued by this luck thing, because it kind of meets a very niche satisfaction for me. Do you think, without looking, you could name the highest win probability added via luck plays from 2018 to 2023? Can you name the number 1 play? The answer is probably not. But
no, I don't think I can.
It is in 2018. It came from the 5th unluckiest team in those years, the 2018 Philadelphia Eagles. With 2 minutes left in the divisional round against the New Orleans Saints, Alshon Jeffrey dropped the pass that was then intercepted, ending the race to repeat. A day that lives in infamy in Philadelphia. And it's just nice to see it kind of spelled out in numbers that, like, hey, you guys don't just think you're unlucky. You are.
Yeah.
So it feels nice.
Yeah. I'm looking up for some of my other numbers. Patrick Mahomes is he becomes the first quarterback in NFL history to win a Super Bowl while carrying the largest cap hit.
Yep.
I learned that from Kay Adams. So Kay Adams gave us that little interesting factoid. I know. There was the Super Bowl drew 123.4 million viewers across CBS and Paramount Plus, which is the most for any broadcast since Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot on the moon on July 20th, 1969.
Yeah. And I can only assume it was specifically because of the Nickelodeon broadcast.
Absolutely.
Had
Let's
nothing
hear
to
about
do
it.
with Taylor Swift. Yeah, so I did not, I forgot to prepare for this segment as much as I wanted to. But there were some incredible moments. I did watch a whole quarter and a half on the Nickelodeon broadcast, and it was truly incredible. And I did find out later that because I was talking to my friend about this, wondering how they recorded it, and it is the voices of SpongeBob and Patrick, and they're in mocap suits doing all of it live. Like, it is happening live, in time. They are unhinged when they don't have a script.
It was wild.
SpongeBob was saying, when the score became 20, like, what's funnier than 24? 25.
25.
And then they were just
When it
talking
gets
about
blocked, when the
Leonardo.
extra point gets blocked.
Yep. And they were talking about Leonardo DiCaprio when they made that joke, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that's like the age of his girlfriend or something." Like,
Yeah.
SpongeBob.
They
This
firmly
is a
grasped
child's
it.
broadcast.
Firmly
Plankton
grasped
started
it on the fumble.
attacking.
Yeah.
Plankton started attacking the audience, and
Mhm.
Larry was just out on the field. Just
Yes.
it was the Toy Story one, but on steroids and crack.
Yes.
It makes total.
Yes.
It was the more unhinged
It
version
was
of
the Toy
Disney.
Story one in Vegas.
Yeah,
It was
well, yeah.
as if you put the Toy Story one in Vegas. I
Yeah.
personally liked when they gave all of the celebrities in the Super Bowl
Oh,
fish
yeah.
duplicates
But
and
not
fish
even
names.
celebrities that were there. Like, some of
No,
them were
just like
there.
random
Not all of them.
celebrities.
Yeah, just random celebrities.
Like
which was even
personally, like they
funnier.
called Billie Eilish Billie Eilish, and
Yep,
they had a cartoon eel with Billie Eilish's green hair.
Yep.
Like incredible, truly.
Really good stuff.
It was cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah. Really good stuff. I have one more fact,
Okay.
I guess, that I want to throw out before I think we start moving toward whatever we're moving toward. And that is one of my favorite charts that I see every year, which is the Super Bowl winning leading rusher and their base salary since 2009. I know I've referenced this a couple times when we've talked about the importance of the running back position. I'm strongly on the side of it's really
Don't
not
pay
that
them.
important. Don't pay them.
Yep.
That if I was just to look down this list, since 2009, the highest cap hit of the Super Bowl winning leading rusher during the game. Can you guess who it is? If I say 2013 Seahawks, can you guess who it is?
No.
No, really? Not even like a super obvious guess?
Sorry, I was trying to pull my stat for the next one. Just give me the answer.
No, a 2013 Seahawks player that led the team in rushing in the Super Bowl.
I'm terrible at years.
Just who is the running back that played for the Seattle Seahawks? This is not hard. He's also an actor, sort of, sometimes.
I don't know what you're asking me. I honestly.
Oh my God! I want you to say Marshawn Lynch because he's a very famous running back.
I'm trying to read this and understand your question at the same time.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to have a conversation with my co-host on the podcast we are currently doing. If that wasn't,
sorry, you said when we were moving towards, and I was trying to get that prepared.
Well, that doesn't mean you can just stop having a conversation with one of the two people on the podcast.
You do that all the time.
Yes, and I'm much better at coming back into it than you are, clearly, because it's never devolved to this. I wanted you to say Marshawn Lynch so I could say, no, it's Percy Harvin, which makes total sense, and also goes to show that he cost $2.5 million, and he was the leading rusher. Last year, Isaiah Pacheco, under $1 million. Cam Akers, under $1 million. Leonard Fournette, $2 million. Damian Williams, barely over $1 million. Sony Michel, under $500,000. You can just go down the list. This year, the answer, the next person to appear on this list will be Patrick Mahomes with a base salary of $59.35 million. So he will stick out like a sore thumb on this list for sure. But yeah, that
still helps your argument somehow.
I think it helps my argument more than if it was just Isaiah Pacheco. Again, it was Isaiah Pacheco last year, and this year it's not going to be.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, I'm really upset about the Seahawks thing. I set that up so well.
Sorry, I was
and you just
reading
gave me
the
nothing.
next part.
You gave me nothing. I set that up so well.
I'm sorry.
There's someone out there who that entire time was screaming Marshawn Lynch, Marshawn Lynch. And it worked on them because then I could say, no, it wasn't. It was Percy Harvin who led the team in rushing. So to that person,
the other thing, you try and do that bait thing all the time.
Yeah, and it normally works.
I know.
This one was really good. Because it was
question,
proving the point again that Patrick Mahomes is proving, where it's not even a running back. It's not even the running back that you pay money to. They paid Marshawn Lynch money, and he didn't even lead the team in rushing in the Super Bowl that they won. It's just, yeah, whatever. Actually, I'm not even 100% sure he was on that team. I'm like 99% sure, though. He had to be. So,
okay. My question for you is, what is your one takeaway for why the Chiefs win this game?
I mean, they have Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Okay. That's my
Was-
question. So my
Oh, okay. I thought,
obvious
yeah.
it's my question to you. And I had a feeling you were going to say that. So my second one is Steve Spagnuolo and how he basically confused the Niners offense a lot in what he did. He played the highest rate of cover 0 and cover 1 on the Niners all season, like quadrupled. He played cover 1 21.4% of the time, and that's cover 0, and cover 1 40.5% of the time. He was in man 64.3% of the time. It was so different from what anybody else had played against the Niners all season, and he kind of like had the guts to challenge the Niners. And what Trent McDuffie did against Debo in the game was absolutely incredible. So just playing to his strengths while also having the guts to do things that everyone else was afraid to play against the Niners because they were afraid to let up the big play. So he allowed them to play up to their strengths while also being ballsy. So it's Patrick Mahomes. I knew you were going to say that. So that was my answer.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it was ballsy. I mean, you're always ballsy when you're calling plays, like, but I think it was just intelligent. Like, I
agree with that 100%.
I almost think it's sort of an insult to say that. I don't think you're insulting Steve Spagnuolo, and I'm not trying to insult you. But I think just
him all day.
What?
I've been
I know.
touting him up all day.
You've been touting him all like the last 5 weeks.
I know.
But it's just like, I think he's just a really intelligent defensive coordinator that said they're not going to have an answer for this. And I don't think that's ballsy, because you know that they're not going to have an answer for it. And worst case scenario, you just go back to what you were doing. Like, I think he's just really, he called a really good game. He called an incredible game that no one was ready for. And by no one, I mean Kyle Shanahan, really, because at the end of the day, it falls back on him.
Agreed. This Niners team may look a little bit different. Brandon Ayuk may not be on this team. Lots of drama happening there. His girlfriend put out a video saying this is the last time we'll step foot in Levi Stadium.
I didn't even step foot in Levi Stadium.
I think it was the day after when they were like getting their stuff from lockers, like the next day.
That makes more sense.
And like his cousin or something had said, like, this is why we're leaving San Francisco. Thank you to the Niners for everything. We're grateful. So that may look different. Obviously, we'll see. You know, Brock Purdy's like long-term future with the team will be a conversation to have in the next couple of months.
Not until next offseason.
Yes, but I'm saying like in the next couple of months is when talks will start between these two teams about the future.
Well, he can't sign an extension yet.
Yes, but I'm saying like talks between the team and what they want for their future. Are they going to expect to sign him to an extension? Like, this team may look different, and they're still going to have to evaluate Brock Purdy coming into this season and at the beginning of this season getting ready.
Yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. I just don't think, obviously this isn't something that's even worth really arguing about. I don't think I don't think they're going to like.
I know what you mean.
They took him to a Super Bowl. They'll worry about it next season.
Yes.
There's nothing they can do this offseason that will change it.
Yep. You have Dre Greenlaw on this defense who may not come back next season, like for a majority of next season.
Week 1, that's for sure.
That's for sure. So this team looks different, and you can use the Dan Campbell logic of we hope to be here, but nothing's promised. And it'll be interesting to see this Niners team's future with a lot of stars on this team. And who stays and who goes and what their plan for the future is.
Yeah, I think they'd be very dumb to let Brandon Ayuk walk. I think he was kind of a significantly better part of this offense than Debo was this season. Debo is very versatile. He's a very talented player. He also costs a lot more money at the moment, and I just think
he's also been getting pretty banged up lately. I mean, the offseason will very much help with that, but
he's always he had last year, I think he was healthy the whole year for the first time in forever.
This game alone, he left with 2 separate injuries in the game, a shoulder injury and a hamstring injury. Yep. So that's tough. And it's someone who's versatile, plays a running back role and a wide receiver role, which causes more wear and tear in general. So it's leveraging your future on Debo and his health more than I would like them to do.
Yeah.
If they let Ayuk walk.
Yep.
Be interesting. And the Chiefs' future is they're the Chiefs.
I mean, honestly, they're in a good position.
Great spot. I agree.
They have a young team. Next year, like a lot of times, like we've been talking about the Bengals and the upcoming contract extensions that they're going to have to dole out eventually. With young team like the Eagles, that was kind of this season for them where you finally have to sign Jalen Hurts. And if you've already signed the quarterback, it's like, okay, the rest of your young talent eventually will come up. Like that's not this offseason for the Chiefs. That was arguably kind of 2 off seasons ago.
2, yeah.
And they've won 2 Super Bowls since then. Go figure. They've got a ton of young talent on defense that, there's going to be obviously Chris Jones. He's going to be a key free agent.
Yes.
But a lot of the young talent that the defense can build around for the future, they don't have to be in a rush to sign them. It's not this offseason. They can be aggressive in the draft and trying to get more weapons for Patrick Mahomes. I would assume maybe they'll trade for Brandon Ayuk. Who knows? But they're probably going to be, they should be able to spend, if not just on Chris Jones, they should be able to bring in some notable free agents.
Chris Jones's agent was on Twitter this morning.
I saw that.
Because Chris Jones in his speech was like, I don't want to leave. Like, I want to stay. Like, my future should be here in Kansas City. I want to keep bringing more. I want to keep making history. And Chris Jones's agent gets on Twitter and is like, the bartender needs to cut them off. Like, this is enough, because he's showing his hand, right? Like it's
just
a game of poker here. Contract negotiations are a game of poker in the NFL. So he's showing his hand a little bit, and his agent is on Twitter talking about how the bartender needs to cut him off so that he can stop his emotional speech and stop costing himself more and more money every time he says another word.
Yep. You know who did not cost himself money? That's Nick Bosa. He just sucked.
Yeah.
This season,
there was 2
comparatively.
There was before we run out of time. There was 2 that I wrote down. He was on the edge. Okay, so Mahomes' like 2 runs, his 2 big crucial runs in this game. Yep. Bosa was on the edge twice and fell for it like twice. Same type of play and didn't adapt whatsoever, and was crucial to the Chiefs' success because he was completely baited on the edge on both of Mahomes' runs.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I said last offseason that Nick Bosa, he got a lot of his sack numbers based on cleanup duty and not legitimately like really earning every inch of a sack. He didn't have a ton of those. This year, he dropped down to 10.5 sacks.
Yeah, and the fact that the Chiefs' offensive line was severely underperforming in this game.
Yeah. Oh, and they were missing an all-pro, by the way, in Joe Thuney.
Yes, in Joe Thuney. And he did not have as big of an impact as you would hope when they're missing their all-pro. Like,
Chase Young played a better game.
That, to me, is everything.
And Javon Hargrave was awesome.
So, interesting. That's it for the season.
Yep.
Weird one. Pretty weird one.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Weird one. I think if you asked me in week, 7 or 8, if this would be the Super Bowl we would have been discussing, I probably would not have believed you.
I would have believed me.
It's possible,
still
but
the Niners and the Chiefs, like the Niners were the best.
No, I get that, but I halfway through the Chiefs were. I know the Chiefs were the Chiefs, but I was like, that was like firmly when I was like, we might be different here. So weird one, and an overtime. You have sense of self.
I also would have guessed Marshawn Lynch, but that's just me.
Oh my God. I was reading something.
We're on a podcast.
The numbers.
We are on a podcast talking to each other. I literally
but you do this all the time.
Where
you will be talking to the people, or you leave me to talk to the people, and I talk to the people while you're looking up your numbers.
Yeah, but here's
that's what I was doing.
Then I say, bring me back in, and then I get it after 1. I repeated the question to you like 19 times, and you were like, "Oh, I'm still trying to read this," and I'm like, "Well, stop, because I'm engaging with you." And you were like, "No, I'm reading."
Hold on.
And I'm like, "No."
Well, because then they were both stuck in my head, and I was so confused. All right, Duncan, what's in store for us?
We're gonna probably take a week or 2 off here, recollect ourselves after this argument, and the Super Bowl and the season and all that. But we'll be back in not too long in the off season to cover the draft, free agency, other things that happen in the off season, I'm sure. Maybe Ashley will start talking to me. I don't know.
Maybe.
Listening when I talk to her, or when I specifically ask for her attention. I don't know.
Maybe I'm doing it because you told me there were no redeeming qualities about me.
Yeah, but I said that
this.
off air, first of all. So don't bring that on air and make me look like a bad guy. You're wearing a shirt that says MILF, man, I love football.
Yes, man, I love football.
I stand by what I said. Also,
I have great t-shirts.
Also, right before when we were trying to plan for the show, you said, I'll be on in 5, and 15 minutes later, you still hadn't showed up. So, like, my bad if I'm saying there's no redeeming qualities when those are the two things of interaction that I've had with you prior to the show today. And now you add this, and I look like I'm even kind of more in the right here. So, I'm just saying.
It's fine. Duncan, where can we find you?
Where
are you going to post pictures of Downey?
I'll post it on Twitter, I guess.
Okay, where is that?
At mpduncan75 on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at Ashley_Marie with 2 A's and Ashley, me, Duncan, and the entire Undroppables crew at theundroppables.com and on our Discord channels, which you can gain access to by becoming a patron at patreon.com/theundroppables. We will see you after our very short break so we can discuss all of the madness of the NFL offseason. Have a great 2 weeks.
Go Birds.
Bye, everyone. Bye.